Hey, Ben here. Zenless on Zero's Battle Pass offers a wide variety of goodies, both the free and paid versions. You do not have to spend to enjoy the game, and you don't even need the wengens they provide. But if you are looking for the best Battle Pass wengen, or you just want to know how strong they could be, this video will help answer that. So like, sub, and share if this helped, and let's begin, shall we? At level 30 of the paid Battle Pass, the Growth Plan, you'll receive a Great Builder's Certificate, used to activate the City Fund. Fancy terms aside, you'll be able to unlock a chosen wengen at Battle Pass level 30. There is a wengen for each class, so let's go through them. Cannon Rotor is a very cool looking attack weapon, it's like a mini tank. It boasts a nice 20% crit rate main stat at maximum level, but the main stat isn't everything to a wengen. At maximum level, it also has a base attack of 594, the same as Starlight Engine and Street Superstar, but slightly less than the signature wengens of the A rank attack units. As for its passive, a 7 to 12% combat attack, aka an additional attack percent multiplier in combat for your total attack pre-combat. And then, every 8 to 6 seconds, attacks that land a crit hit on an enemy will inflict 200% of your attack as damage. Unfortunately for Cannon Rotor, this cannot crit, and so 200% uncrittable attack multipliers every 8 to 6 seconds is kind of lackluster. It's a decent statistic, it's easy to use and it just works, but the free Starlight Engine is just better. You get the same base attack, and you trade 12% combat attack, 20% crit rate, and weak damage procs for 19.2% combat attack and 25% attack. The crit rate may persuade you to go for Cannon Rotor, but combat attack is really strong, and the 25% attack on top, that is being multiplied by said combat attack, is excellent. Every attack unit I've calculated so far has favored Starlight Engine over Cannon Rotor. Whether 5 paid battle passes for crit rate is worth a wengen weaker than a free-to-play option is up to you. Next up is 6-shooter, our stun weapon. Wait, where's the 6th bullet chamber? Well, according to Reddit, it's to avoid accidental discharges, but let's get back to the game. So the base attack doesn't really matter, but it's also 594 like Cannon Rotor was. Its main stat is 15% impact, on par with the Ambi signature as well as the free fossilized core. You'll gain a charge every 3 seconds, stacking up to 6 times. These will be consumed upon your next EX special for a day's percent increase, which is like a multiplier to the days you deal. EX specials inflict an insane amount of days on enemies, so extra multipliers to these is a great thing. So in reality, this is a really strong stunner weapon, just one big problem. Stun weapons are kind of irrelevant to min-max as they all stun pretty well, and you can also just run a B rank wengen. It is also outclassed by Steam Oven, a free wengen. Steam Oven gives combat impact percent, an extra multiplier to your total impact pre-combat, on top of 50% energy regen, which means more EX specials in the first place. In calculations, the days difference between the two is negligible, so all you should be comparing is no energy versus some energy gains. So again, 5 battle passes for a weaker version of a free-to-play weapon, I would not get 6-shooter. Now for the next wengen, which looks to be better than the previous two, just don't get too close to it. Electro Lip Gloss is our Anomaly weapon. Again, a base attack of 594, and the main stat is 75 Anomaly Proficiency, which is a damage increase to all Anomaly damage. If an enemy is inflicted with an Anomaly, go watch my guide if you don't know what that is, then you'll get 2 buffs. You'll get a 16% combat attack buff, and a 25% damage increase versus the target with Anomaly. So the attack is universal, the damage is only versus said enemy. This means you can shock some random weakling and get a free big attack buff for any future anomalies against any other enemies. This wengen is very strong at max potential. 75 AP, 16% combat attack, and 25% damage. It's like an S rank at this point. And in grace calculations, if all buffs are up, it is indeed S rank worthy. My only problem with it is how anomalies work. They snapshot the stats you have when you apply your elements attribute. The very first anomaly you do will get no buffs, but the second anomaly you do will be mega buffed. But then anomalies don't last forever, they last 10 seconds, meaning in order for you to maximize this, you'd need to proc one anomaly and then another in quick succession. This is actually fine for both Grace and Piper so far, and this class will probably always be able to reapply anomalies very quickly. So this wengen, when it's up and running versus an enemy, can outperform Grace's signature, and if it has no buffs, it is very weak. It also won't beat Piper's signature on Piper, but that thing is way too OP on her anyway. So in extended fights, this is a great pickup, at least compared to the 2 previous Battle Pass weapons. Up comes Unfettered Game Balls, our supportive Wenjin. A base stack of 594 again, and an energy regen main stat, which is nice and useful for our supports. When the Equipper's attack triggers an attribute counter effect, all squad members' crit rate against the struck enemy specifically will increase by 12 to 20% for 12 seconds. I'm making it clear that it's against the struck enemy. Don't just get a magical 20% crit rate buff to all attacks for all squad members out of nowhere. This doesn't show up in effect details or the stat page from testing. Whilst you could have a 20% crit rate buff to damage against one target, an attack against a different target wouldn't get this buff unless your support hit them. So some nice crit rate, but what is an attribute counter? Well, it seems from some testing, it's when you attack an enemy with an element they are weak to, which you can see before fights in Shiyu for example. If the enemy is only weak to fire, you'd only be able to run this on Lucy, and Sukaku and Rin and Nicole wouldn't let you get the crit rate. This makes it kinda niche as you won't always be against an enemy weak to your element. At least maybe not until we are way later in the game's lifetime and have multiple full teams built. And what are our game balls competing against? Let's take for example Kaboom the Cannon on Lucy, giving us a possible 16% combat attack from her little balls and herself, or the Unfettered. This, in actuality, is just as strong as Game Ball at equal phases on my Soldier 11 simulation. Bashful Demon on Sukaku can reach 12.8% combat attack but requires some on-field presence. So in this case, you would kinda like the easy use of Game Ball. There's the problem of Ellen with Signature having too much crit rate, but it worked fine with other DPS. I can see this being a good option on Nicole over the Vault, but again, ether weak enemies required. And Rina could like this too if you don't have her Signature, as long as you're maxing out her pen ratios buff. I think Game Ball, just like Lip Gloss, is one of the better options. If you can make good use of it, its effects are pretty powerful. If you're having problems wondering what weakness you'll fight, you can fight it for every enemy on a Shiyu defense stage before entering, and for the main boss in Hollow Zero. We also have a database of every enemy and their weaknesses in the archives. Our final Wenjin is Spring Embrace for the defense class, which is sorely lacking agents, but bear with me. Thankfully, it has a base attack of 594, so I can go to bed happy tonight knowing that all Battle Pass Wenjins have the same base attack. It also has an attack percent stat, which is a little sus, but the passive is key. Damage taken will be reduced by a percentage, which isn't too crazy, but when attacked, you'll get an energy generation buff for 12 seconds. This ranges from 10% to 16%. However, if you swap off-field, this buff will be transferred to the new on-field character for another 12 seconds. So just don't mess up who you swap to. Energy generation rate is an extra multiplier to energy. Energy regen is how much energy you get per second in combat for all agents, and doesn't affect energy earned through attacking enemies with certain abilities. And energy regen percent increases that energy per second in combat, and that alone. Energy generation rate, however, further multiplies the energy regen stat on top, and then it also boosts energy from abilities. So basically, generation rate is the cooler one, and having this is pretty nice. It's only a 1.16 times boost, but it's something. Furthermore, defense characters have no utility Wenjins outside of this one, all the rest are just personal selfish buffs. So if you want your Ben or any future defense gamer to actually buff your team with their weapon, you can do so with Spring Embrace. For reference, 2 Soldier 11 basic attack strings can generate around 28 energy, including the energy per second, and this can give her an extra 2.8 to 4.56 energy, depending on its phase. So in general, I'd avoid the stun one, get Starlight Engine instead for attack units, and the last 3 can be up to your preference. High anomaly potential when used right, high supportive potential when used right, and the only buffing defensive Wenjin. I hope this video helped. Like and sub and share if it did. Thanks for watching, and have a Guoba day.